Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Devin Allen, Commissioner Precinct 2. Here. Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Pastor Tim Woody from the City Life Center Church in Fort Worth. Thank you so much for coming out today. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges.
Let's pray. Most sovereign God, we come to you today to pray blessing over this Tarrant County Commissioners Court. Thank you, God, for the diligent work these people do as they strive to govern my great county. As they make decisions today regarding our infrastructure and transportation and expenditures and the needs of the people, I humbly request the wisdom of God to be present in this room. Pray specifically for Judge Whitley as he presides over today's proceedings. Also pray for blessing over their commissioners and bless their work, but also bless their families and their homes. Even bless Sheriff Wayburn today as well. And God, I pray that Tarrant County leadership will continue to be marked by strong ethics, compassion, creativity, humility, and wisdom. Now I pray that the Spirit of the Lord will rest upon Judge Whitley and these commissioners. I pray for the spirit of wisdom and understanding, counsel and might and knowledge, and the fear of the Lord. Give them sharp minds and a diligent spirit, and may they honor you today as they serve the 2 million residents of the best-run county in America. And God, may you be enthroned above all else in Tarrant County. May God get the glory of everyone in this place today. And for God, we invoke your presence into this room right now. You're welcome in this place. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor and respect the flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Pastor. Agenda announcements, Mr. Maynes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, we have 3 announcements on the agenda this morning. The first one is under purchasing, item 8I1. This is RFP number 2020-002. We are going to hold that for 1 week. Also under purchasing, item 8I4. This is RFP number 2016-207. My office has requested that purchasing hold this, and they've agreed, so we're going to hold this for 1 week. And then finally, members of the court, under transportation, which is item 8K1. This is a resolution declaring a tract of land surplus so that we can sell this. There is a slight revision in the court communique. We misstated 1 month. We've corrected that, and we'll be seeking your approval on that particular item when you get to the consent agenda. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. That last part.
Yes, ma'am.
Please repeat that. I missed that.
I'm
About
sorry.
The 1 month, the reference to the 1 month.
Yeah, what happened was that on the original court communication, I think we listed one date as a November 1. It was actually a September 1.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of January the 21st.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Brooks, I believe you have a resolution.
I do, Your Honor, and it is a mixed blessing this morning. We recognize one who has contributed 37 years of her life to the service of the people of Tarrant County in a very critical area, that being public health. In many ways, for 37 years, Ann Sawyer Caldwell has been the glue that has held our very fine public health department together. She has been the face of public health in the community as she has reached out and encouraged public health to become involved in numerous community initiatives. She has taken it upon herself to retire and to look for adventures in other pastures. And by this resolution, I want us all to wish her well. And with your permission, I will read it into the record. Whereas Ann Sawyer Caldwell has dedicated 37 years of service to the Tarrant County Public Health Department and played a crucial role in expanding community engagement by launching strategic initiatives. And whereas Ann Sawyer Caldwell earned a Bachelor of Science degree in dietetics from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and a Master's of Public Health degree from Tulane University School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine. And whereas Ann Sawyer Caldwell served as a registered dietitian at the Lutheran Home of New Orleans, launching the WIC program for the city of New Orleans, Louisiana, then accepted a position as Tarrant County Public Health Division Manager overseeing maternal, child health, and immunization services. And whereas Ann Sawyer Caldwell was promoted to Associate Director in 2005, serving as the first Deputy Director of the Tarrant County Public Health Department. And whereas Ann Sawyer Caldwell became a commissioned officer in the United States Reserve in 1985, serving as Direct Patient Care Dietitian, Humanitarian Mission Coordinator, Executive Officer of Fleet Hospital, Dallas, retiring in 2008 at the rank of captain. And whereas Ann Sawyer Caldwell is a founding member of the Tarrant County Infant Health Network, the Tarrant County Food Policy Council, and serves as a board member for Meals on Wheels, Tarrant County, and 60 and Better. And I don't know how the Nurse Family Partnership got left out of here, but there's that too. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby congratulate Ann Sawyer Caldwell for her 37 years of service to the Tarrant County Public Health Department and for a legacy of unifying the community to bring resources, educational support, and empowerment to the citizens of Tarrant County. In witness whereof we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 28th day of January 2020. I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. She needs to come all the way up here.
And please.
Thank you.
Thank you. So kind of you. Very kind. Very kind.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's get here and get the picture cut.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Make any comments you want to make.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, sir.
Go to the podium.
Yes, sir. I know the drill.
Yeah, but this time we won't be drilling you.
That's true.
I've actually forgotten all of that. I just want to say thank you all so much for this recognition. And I was thinking about what am I going to say when I get here? I'll be just fine. And then all these people from public health showed up. So that makes it a little bit harder to make my comments. But I want to say that for 37 years, I've had the privilege of doing what I wanted to do. A lot of people say, I can't wait to retire and everything. It's going to be hard for me to leave on the 31st. I absolutely have loved my life here, working with the community, working in public health. That's totally my thing. I have the dream job. There's no doubt about it. And I appreciate my abilities being recognized so that I have been able to do other things at the health department. And I think that as I move into the new phase of my life, I will always be an advocate for public health and for Tarrant County because it's an awesome place to work. Thank you.
Well, Ann, I will just tell you this. I don't envy the person who follows you. I followed someone whose shoes I could never fill, and whoever follows you will find the same thing there.
Thank you very much.
So thank you very
Thank
much
you
for
all.
your 37
I appreciate
years.
it.
Good luck, Ann.
Thank you.
And Vinny. Good luck, brother.
I understand that there are at least a couple of announcements that you would like to make.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Well, so you all missed this part earlier. Before we started the meeting, the judge made fun of me for not having resolutions. But I said, well, I always either have resolutions or announcements. So here goes. Well, I actually have a few thank yous. One, I want to thank the community for coming out to our elections equipment demonstration that we had last week at our Arlington Sub Courthouse. We have one this week, Thursday, January 30th at UT Arlington in the San Saba room in their University Center. Then also I want to thank members of the community and the House Redistricting Committee for the hearing that they hosted last Wednesday evening. I was there to testify, as were other community leaders and members. And then a huge thank you to the entire community in Tarrant and Parker County for participating in the annual point and time count. That was last Thursday evening. I was at the Arlington location, but there were operations in Fort Worth and elsewhere, and for the first time we had a team out in Mansfield, which is very significant. So with that point in time count, if you're not familiar with it, this happens nationally every January, the last 10 days of January, where members of the community organizations gather to speak with the unsheltered that are in our community. So many of you know that I grew up with a somewhat difficult background, and for a time I was homeless, and so the issue of homelessness and housing and some of those root issues that affect the homeless is very near and dear to my heart. And I want to thank everyone, whether it was work on the back end or volunteering, if you were with police departments, you name it, and even our housing, our community development department, everyone who played a role in that annual point in time count. So that's it.
Any other announcements? I know you're getting close to announcing.
County Junior Livestock
Yeah,
Show.
it's
Checks
coming
in the
up.
mail.
I've got my checkbook with me. I'll give you the check after the court meeting here this morning. Looks like Fickus is digging in his pocket to see if he can get his dollar out.
Yeah, but he's in his nickel and dime pocket. That ain't gonna work.
He's gonna pull a check out, so I think you'll be all right. While he is in the process of trying to locate his,
I got it.
you got it?
Okay.
Have you already made it out?
It's already made up.
All right.
I'm prepared.
Thank you. Kids, thank you.
Again, you do a great job with that every year, and whenever I talk about the Junior Livestock Exchange, people say, well, it's JD's focus, and that it's made a tremendous difference in the lives of the youth, and the ones that spend so much time preparing for it, and that are not, disappointed in the fact that they don't walk away without getting something for all that time they've done.
And they're all rewarded if they make the sale.
Yeah. Court members, you have before you the consent agenda.
Move approval with the changes that have been recommended.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Manius?
Thank you, Your Honor. We have two additional items for the court's consideration this morning. The first, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court authorize the county administrator to submit a grant application to the Texas Counts Pool Fund for Tarrant County's 2020 census program.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I
Please
do.
vote. Whoop.
I want to add a thank you to our team for applying for this grant. I think it's really important, especially given the fact that our state did not allocate any resources for it, and I know that we'll get an update about our own count effort. But I think it's a great idea that we're going for this. So.
Yeah, they're doing a great job, Commissioner, and we have an update on Texas or Tarrant Counts in the briefing section of this meeting today.
I'm ready.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Member of the court, item number 2, we're requesting that the court approve the submittal of a notice of intent to apply for and project applications to the Texas Department of Emergency Management, and this is related to a flood control study for the city of Everman.
Move approval. This is something that is very much needed by the city of Everman.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, court.
Thank you. Ms. Tidwell?
We have two items for the court to consider this morning. The first, we're asking you to receive and file the auditor's report related to the Sheriff's Chapter 59 Asset Forfeiture Report for the year ended 2019.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And our other item is we're asking you specifically to authorize the county auditor to remove from the books and records the 950 assets identified in your court communique with a book value of $64,686.46. Be happy to answer any questions.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I hope that we do an inventory on a regular basis.
I hope so too.
This is pretty voluminous, and is not something I hope that repeats again. And I know I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to everybody in this room. We've got inventory items, and it needs to be done on an annual basis. And we don't need to be writing off some whole bunch of pages in this many items ever again.
I would like to give credit to Laura Weist and Janine Sosha in my office, because while the inventories hadn't been done in several years, and even though we hired an outside firm, the books and records didn't match at all what we had. And so there was an extensive effort by the employees in my office to reconcile, which is our job, but it was an extensive effort even to get to this point. And so we certainly hope that we don't have to go through this again, yes. And we do have attached, just I'll mention, and we're not going to bring it back, but we have our review of the process and procedures and our suggestions for how we can make this process work better in the future. And so we have that, and then you have responses from the IT and the purchasing agent who's responsible for providing the inventory to the auditor. And so we will continue to work with them to try to improve this process.
But the result will end up being that we will do an annual inventory,
Yes, sir.
and that my office will be presented with the list of assets that I'm supposed to have in my office, and I will be held to account for those that are no longer there or what happened to them.
Right. But we also need to do some of the things that we have listed, just even the transfer sheets, because you can do the inventory, but in order to make sure the books and records reflect a closer approximation of the inventory, it would be really nice if we had improved processes so it made it easier when we had that inventory conducted. But yes, we will have to conduct an annual inventory.
And I will admit to you that I should have read it closer. As of what date was this inventory done?
I've slept since then. It was January of last year, I believe, yeah.
So that means we have a list of all the assets as of January of last year that were supposed to have been accounted for, and what we're now doing is writing off everything that was not accounted for as of January of 19.
Yes.
So then I would like to see that in January, well, maybe not January of 20, because we're a little close to the end, but within the next month, I would hope that that list of assets is delivered to everybody, and they are held accountable for what happened between then and now.
Right. And of course, the law requires that the list be provided to the auditor July 1. But between now and July 1, everyone is working, all the departments, the purchasing department, the various assets are in the various departments, and then certainly IT. There are some things, though, here that really hopefully will be addressed that could still be issues, and we will work on making sure that those process and procedures get refined and that we work on the asset transfer sheets and continue to improve this process. It's been neglected for quite some time.
So at what point could we maybe expect a timeline of how we're going to accomplish this inventory this year? I mean, we'll be here next year and we won't have done anything if somebody doesn't bring a timeline back to this court that says by this date, the inventory is going to be passed out to every department, to every elected official, and that will then be turned back in, or something. What's the timeline?
Well, the purchasing agent, and I've certainly, Jack can speak to you, but the purchasing agent does that as far as submitting the list to the departments. The majority of these assets are from information technology, and I would hope that they would be able to provide you a timeline, but they would need to speak to that since I don't really have, I don't know what that might look like.
And without really, I mean, Keith, if you want to come on up, you can, but I'm not looking that we have to have an answer today, but I want an answer by the end of February as to what we're going to do to verify that this doesn't happen again.
Yes, sir. We have new processes that have been approved and put in place associated with it. So it was as of January 31, which is the normal start time that we talk about in inventory, we'll produce a list of inventory, and then we'll start to the process of doing that physical inventory and communicating with the departments. We typically need to submit that back to the purchasing department and to the auditor's office no later than June or July 1. July 1.
So you're telling me at the end of this month, which is this Friday,
yes, sir,
you're going to have a list of what everybody's
yes,
supposed to have. And
yes,
when am I going to get my list?
It'll happen over the next, well, from an IT perspective, we start that inventory ourselves and we reach out over the next couple of months to the departments to help verify it. But since our skill set is related to IT, we try to facilitate that inventory ourselves. But we'll be working with the individual departments to do that over the next couple of months.
You still haven't answered my question.
You're talking about the IT inventory.
Yes, ma'am.
Which
Yes,
is
sir.
not the total inventory.
I don't do the rest of the inventory, just the IT inventory, sir.
And what I'm saying is I'm not expecting an answer today,
Then let us
but I want an answer by the end of February.
So let us come back and give you, we've heard what you're asking for. Let us come back in a couple of weeks and we'll give you that timeline.
GK, this whole subject came up maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yes, sir.
Well, shame on y'all. 2 years ago, we were talking to IT, wanting to know where these items were. And you're telling us that this coming Friday, you might know, or in February you're gonna know? And we started talking about this 2 years ago with the auditor, about the deficiencies on the IT department being able to identify their assets.
Yes,
What's
sir.
been going on for the past 2 years?
We've actually gone through 3 physical inventories since then to try to narrow the scope on how many items we're missing. 2 by the IT department and 1 by the outside firms. And ultimately, this is the culmination of those 3 inventories. This recommendation is the culmination of the 3 inventories, along with the new processes.
All these things we're, quote, writing off.
Yes, sir.
Doesn't appear that you found them. If you had found them,
No, these were not
we wouldn't be
found.
writing them off.
No.
Another question, the values that have been given, is that the values that were given at the time it was purchased? Is that still a valid value?
Well, they're fully depreciated because most of them have.
Certainly.
But, so the 64,000 is the net. Of the 950, the majority of all of them are fully depreciated, so their book value is 0. But that's not what we paid for them. Obviously, the column in your report would address the value of the asset, but fixed assets over a period of time, we have the actual cost listed there, but again, they're all fully depreciated for the most part. The process was severely broken. I mean, I'm not going to stand here and say that it wasn't, because it was. It wasn't just that the inventory wasn't conducted either from an IT perspective. The process was broken. The asset transfer sheets. We still have to address who's going to be responsible for example, all the election equipment that you've just recently purchased, because IT doesn't want to count that because it's not in their cost center. So then that's going to fall to elections. How are we going to do that? When it finally comes to the auditor has to take everything that we know we've paid for, because we do have a system and a process for recording assets when we buy them. And then we have to reconcile everything that we've paid for to what everybody says they have. And this was a nightmare because we hadn't done an inventory and the process itself just didn't work. The asset transfer sheets were not getting entered into the system. They were not accurately reflecting where assets were. IT has made improvements. They have some technology to use and advancements to do a better job of keeping track. But this whole, I don't want to go through this again either, nor do my staff, because on the reconciliation end, it was a nightmare, even after those 3 inventories and even after we hired an outside consultant. Because we have a lot of stuff, particularly IT-related stuff. But we worked extensively to also identify those key recommendations that are in here that we think have to be addressed, because while we've automated the transfer sheet, we still need to have it incorporated in SAP so that the books and records are getting updated when we transfer an asset, so we know where they are. So.
Well, and I mean, I can actually remember back about 23 years when I was a commissioner and we would do an annual inventory, and I had to basically sign off and say, this is what we've got, not only in my office, but also in the garage. But I don't remember doing that. Now, maybe somebody in my office is doing it.
You still do that for the non-IT assets. The purchasing department still supplies a list of assets that the department head is responsible for determining whether or not you still have those. Just may not be you personally in your office. It's probably Natalie or Catherine or Rachel or someone, because you don't have the same quantity of assets that you had as a commissioner, again, as far as the dollar value. But yes, that still happens. And that process, again, addressing some of those assets that IT's not tracking can be improved as well. But the majority of these assets and the real deficiency here is related to information technology assets.
So, Renee, did I hear you say, I guess if there's something that still remains that has to be put into SAP, so where does that fit in the timeline? Because does that need to be done before we start on the 2020 inventory?
Well, it needs to be done, but it's to some extent, as Judge Whitley was pointing out, anything that was transferred in theory from January of 2019 till today was still dependent on someone entering it in SAP. And so it would behoove us to do that very quickly, because then when we get to the inventory in 2021, the books and records hopefully will more closely approximate the actual physical assets on the ground. We have a lot of things, and again, some of them lose their value, and we don't keep up with them as closely, but they have salvage value. They go to auction, and so it really is, there's a lot of physical assets to deal with here. Not just the ones we're writing off, but the inventory. You may know how many assets the county has. I don't even know, but it's a lot. But the process was neglected for a long time, and hopefully that won't happen again.
Yeah. So I just want to say, for my department, we had those 3 inventories floating out there, and they try to combine them. At the end of the day, just be mindful that the inventory they gave us and said was missing, we cut that in half, because when everybody's trying to go out and look at barcodes, one was missing a number was transposed. So my only suggestion to IT is whoever's doing that, really slow down, because ultimately I know it's my responsibility, because I knew we would have this conversation. So when that list came to me from Renee's office, I said, no, I want every single manager to go find what you can find. And we cut ours in half. But because they were trying to get this done and you had so many different processes, just be mindful. Some of the tags are off, a number was converted, and it's missing. But I mean, it's a machine the size of Texas sitting in one of my offices. It wasn't missing, it was there. So just in the process of us going through all of this, just be mindful. It's just human error that's going to kick in on some of these. So we went back through, because from what I'm understanding from Judge Whitley, it is my responsibility when this list gets kicked out, then we ultimately take a look. I'm not going to depend on IT to make sure they're there. I'm going to go that extra mile, because I knew at some point y'all were going to call us up and say, why are you missing 25 computers when I know I have them? But it is just trying to get it done, guys. It's human error, and just be mindful of that. That's what we did to make sure we got our list down.
Makes sense.
And I guess, what we're saying is we're removing assets, and the implication is we couldn't find these things, right?
That's correct. We need to remove them from the books and records. They may have been auctioned, they may have been transferred and lost, et cetera, but for the outside audit, one of the reasons for wanting to get this done is for the outside audit, we need to remove all of these assets from our books and records, because we don't have them.
And I understand that, but I go through, there's probably about maybe less than 10, but here on page 1 at the very bottom, we have a line scan, 215E scanner, that's $38,000. When we start talking about something that big, and then the next page we have network cameras and book scanners.
Some of them could have been traded in and not really recorded as being traded in, so they still need to be removed from the fixed asset list.
And I guess that's kind of the thing. I mean,
Some
if
of them,
somebody
again,
picks
were-
this up, and if it was traded in, or if it was
sold at auction.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on one page here, and I got an item called a Unis storage area that's $388,000. I hope we couldn't just not find that. And then below that is a $288,000 item, and below that is a $110,000 item, and below that is a $676,000 item. Now, those are 4 items that account for about $1.3 million. And I would kind of like to have a little bit more than an explanation of them being on a list that we can't find.
I can get back with you on specific assets. I will say again that there was a huge problem with items being appropriately recorded when sold at salvage at the auction, because you would have pallets of equipment that would then be taken to auction and sold. And if you don't have good records associated with the fact that those assets were auctioned off and sold, they are gone, and we may have received receipts for them, but you can't. That was part of the extensive reconciliation, is trying to go back through the auctions and reconcile back to the pieces that were sold at auction.
So
But
I'm
when you
hearing-
start with bad information, you're continuing to produce inaccurate information, and at the end, when you're disposing of the assets, you're not getting a complete and detailed listing of assets that you're disposing of, then to some extent, you're not going to be able to know exactly where those assets are, other than the fact that you can't find them. And as Mary Louise pointed out, my office did work extensively with the departments to try to identify anything that was there that had not been identified.
So Renee, and I don't want to read into what you're saying, but I want to make sure that I'm understanding you. So there was a practice to auction off a pallet of goods, equipment, but not necessarily have an itemized list that corresponds with.
Well, that
whatever
happened. That's
pallet.
not, I'm not gonna say that was the policy, it certainly
Sure.
wasn't. But that happened, and some of it, again, there was large quantities of materials to be auctioned at different times. I actually physically myself saw pallets upon pallets upon pallets sitting over in IT's area that were awaiting auction. Some of them were shrink wrapped, some of them were not shrink wrapped. I know CSCD liquidated a bunch of computers that they'd had for years, and those came over and created a lot of assets. The only way, I will say this, the only way this won't ever happen again, because I actually stood here a number of years ago. Some of you won't remember that, but I do. I've actually been here once before on this very same topic. It's just been a while. The only way this won't happen again is if we truly put enough emphasis and focus on making sure that we don't just hand it off to someone and expect them to go do it. And it doesn't matter who that person is or which department they're in, we have to place an appropriate emphasis here. I'm sure Jack would tell you the same thing. Purchasing struggles even with the lesser quantity of assets that it's also trying to identify. Because this isn't a priority for people. Maybe after today, it'll be more of a priority, and particularly for the IT assets, and that we need to do a better job of keeping up and knowing where they are. Because again, on the financial side, when we buy something, we know what we bought, and we know what we paid for it. We just don't always know what happened to it.
So I think to wrap this up, unless somebody else has anything to say, what you're telling, one, I want a timeline. What I hear you saying is that inventory is supposed to be to you by July the 31st.
July 1st.
July the 1st. And that would be for the fiscal year or for the calendar year of 2019?
Well, for this year on July 1st, it would be for January 2020. So it would be.
Because this is January 2019.
Right.
So you're telling me then that this process is on a calendar year, not a fiscal year?
For the most part, we start, again, as Keith said, we start in February, and we're supposed to be working from February through June to do this process.
So the goal would be to get to the point to where we never have any items on a list because
we would know what happened to them.
We would know what's happened to something.
Yes, sir.
And so right now, all I got to remember is, with regards to my office, is what's happened since January of 2019.
Yes. Do you have any assets that you've acquired or disposed of since then?
Okay. So, GK, when are we going to have the timeline?
We'll have it in several weeks, Judge. We're going to have to bring about 4 different departments together to figure out the timeline that you're asking for. We'll also provide some greater clarification if it's a fiscal year or a calendar year. And actually what's happening, we're following statutes that require us to do inventories. And so let us have 2 weeks and we'll bring it back to you.
Yeah. And I do remember, I mean, the last I kind of remember this is that we were told that we don't have the manpower or the personnel able to go back and to do this for this time. And so we hired a company, I thought, to do that.
We did hire a company. They did come in and do an inventory. I was disappointed in that. I don't know what IT would say. I mean, it was a big task, but I was disappointed in the results that we received from them. And so, as Keith said, IT then also did 2 inventories in addition to the one we paid for to the vendor. And we still have this list. So
we'll look for between now and the end of February to have the timeline, but I want to be sure that I understand that we're not just talking about IT, we're talking about everything. I want a timeline that says we're counting everything we got and how we're going to go about doing it and how we're going to go about reconciling that in the time, and all of this has got to get done by July the 1st.
Right. And keep in mind for non-IT assets, it's as you described, purchasing provides a list of the assets to the departments, and the departments are responsible for noting the correctness and accuracy of that list. Fixing our transfer sheets, I'll go back to that because that is a huge thing. That would help make the list that is sent out by purchasing more accurate if we had a better ability to actually track assets. Also, departments sometimes though don't always complete the transfer sheets, and that maybe Sally knows Timmy and Timmy needs something that Sally doesn't need anymore, and so they just share it. But we really have to get focused on making certain that we complete those transfer sheets so that when Sally doesn't have it anymore in her department, we know that it went to Timmy's. And so even what purchasing does is we're relying on the departments, and the departments making certain that those assets are present and that they are completing the sheets and getting them back to purchasing.
So the goal will be not for Timmy or Sally's name to appear on a list saying that they don't know where something is that they had in their office the prior year. You just watch, I'll be the one that will be on the list.
Or otherwise, then the auditor's office is calling around and asking, and then finally Timmy says, oh yeah, we've got that. And so then it's not on the list because we found it, but again, it takes extra effort to find it. So.
Any other questions or comments, or please vote? We do have a second and we got a motion and a second. Motion passes unanimously.
Move to receive and file personnel agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, receive and file the personnel agenda. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We have a second item, and this is to seek approval to include bariatric surgery as a covered benefit under the Public Employees Benefit Cooperative Medical Plan. I'm going to fill you in on some of the details of this. This would be a first time for us to offer these services. The Board of Governors discussed this at the December 4th meeting and did decide they wanted to recommend it for the various courts' approval. It's been discussed on and off probably for a year or so. This would go into effect as a service February 1st. There is eligibility criteria that an individual must meet in order to qualify. They must be more than 18 years of age and must, unless they've achieved certain growth requirements and other kinds of requirements for under 18. The individual must have a minimum BMI of 40 or a BMI of 35 with at least one comorbidity, such as diabetes, hypertension, those sort of things. They must also participate in a multidisciplinary surgical preparatory regimen. So, for example, they would have to have a psychological evaluation. There would be a requirement of a 3-month physician-supervised weight loss program, and so it's not going to be that just everybody could sign up for this. The plan would cover one surgery per lifetime and any complications that may or may not arise. And excess skin removal is not covered. So the other part so that's kind of how an individual would meet the criteria. But in addition to that, they can only utilize an Optum bariatric resource or Center of Excellence, and they must be required to enroll in an Optum Bariatric Resource Services program. Easy for me to say. So there are some criteria. They do have to enroll in a program. There are only specific locations and that they can use. So it is anticipated that, so there's 2 different kinds of surgery, and those are typically, gastric bypass or the gastric sleeve. The cost of those surgeries run anywhere between $12,000 and $30,000, depending on which surgery it is. And the estimate is that it could cost us about $100,000 annually. But we anticipate that with that cost, there will be offset cost in medical care. Typically, those individuals that are morbidly obese cost a health plan 33% more. And based on some research that was done, or it's expected, I'm sorry, that 73% more in cost, and that 33% of our population in Texas is morbidly obese. So I'm happy to try to answer questions or seek your approval for this.
So is Optum a provider?
Yes.
Okay.
So Optum is a partner with United Healthcare.
And we've discussed this, I mean, we've discussed this several times over the years, and we really wanted it to be a situation where you just couldn't, okay, I'm gonna try this.
Sure.
But that there had to be certain steps that you would go through in order to be able to qualify to do that. And we talked about this at our last board meeting, and it was a unanimous decision by the board to move forward. Again, if they do submit to this, you know, the first thing they've got to do is they've got to go through and have the psychological work done. They have to have they have to be on a program with a physician for 3 months, weight loss type program. And it's mostly to try to make sure that they understand and that they get into the thinking of, okay, what's the diet? What's going to be required after this in order not to slip back into old habits that may have contributed to the obesity from that perspective.
Their program, and then we discussed this last week, the program that they have through this Bariatric Center of Excellence appears to have a very high success rate.
That was going to be my next question.
They do, I think, a good job in our particular healthcare provider, United. They seem to have this program to the point where it's what they have you go through prior to surgery. It pretty much doesn't guarantee anything, but it leaves us with a high level of expectation that people are going to be able to succeed. And of course, so much of this is here, is where it's at, and but they seem to do an excellent job, and so again, as Lynn said, it was unanimous. So for us in Dallas to vote on something unanimous is somewhat unusual.
I think the fact that the way this is structured makes the bariatric surgery a treatment of last resort is appropriate, because some people need this in order to save their lives.
Right.
So I will move approval if you don't have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Vinnie.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the court.
Good morning.
We have several items before you this morning for your consideration. First item is Public Health requesting approval to submit an application to the Department of Homeland Security for civil surgeon designation for both our physicians, Dr. Colquitt and Dr. Murthy. The idea being that we have a lot of clients who come to our refugee program, and they're on various different type of statuses, and they're going through their immigration process, and they usually have to go to a civil surgeon who usually ask them to go get a TB skin test done or a chest x-ray done, which they come back to us for those services. And then our staff are helping them understand the form, the I-693, and spending time doing all the work with them, only to go back to the civil surgeon to have them sign the form, and they recoup the dollars. So we're hoping that we can get our clinicians approved as civil surgeons, and then later we'll bring back to you how we can leverage that ability to add on a service and make it a one-stop shop for those individuals and for others in the community who might need that service as well.
Please explain to us what a civil surgeon's function is.
It's a designated role by the Department of Homeland Security. The main purpose that most people are familiar with is to go over the immigration forms, and there are certain required health screenings that the individual has to go through, that they must have some vaccinations that are required, They must be tested for STDs and other things, including TB. If they're positive for certain things, and if there's treatment available, they're supposed to work with their local health departments to go through that treatment. And once everything's under control, they get the clearance from the civil surgeon to proceed with their immigration process.
So where does the money come in? You said so that we send them away to go see a civil surgeon, they complete their paperwork, and those civil surgeons get the money.
Right.
Okay.
So the fee varies, but I think the ballpark is about $500, and I think I've seen it fluctuate a little bit, and we'll investigate that a little bit further once we have the certification. But there's no insurance coverage; it's all out-of-pocket expenses. So that's where the fee is. The individual going through the immigration process has really no choice. I mean, if they want to get their forms certified, they have to go through this clearance. So it's, every person who's going through the immigration process to get a green card must go through this process. So it's kind of a captive audience, and it comes from out-of-pocket costs. So we will bring that back, but the first step is to get our folks certified as civil surgeons, and then we'll investigate the fees, and then we'll bring that back to court to get your approval to add that on as a service.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and seconds. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Second item for your consideration is a approval of Memorandum of Understanding between Early Childhood Services of Mhmr of Tarrant County and Tarrant County Public Health. This is to get in a referral program with them. They have parent cafes that are sort of peer networking groups about parenting skills, and to provide them referrals through our programs such as WIC or Nurse Family Partnership and other programs that deal with moms and children.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. A third item is a request for approval of the National Association of County and City Health Officials grant contract for the Medical Reserve Corps Operational Readiness Award.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Fourth item here is a request for approval of an interlocal cooperation contract between Tarrant County and the Department of State Health Services for the North Texas Syndromic Surveillance Program. Now, this item you might have seen before. We used to have a direct grant from the federal government, from the CDC, and then this funding got shifted to DSHS, and then the contracts were delayed, so I came before you to ask for interim financing a couple of times. Now it's finally here. The contract amount is about $250,000.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Final item is a request for approval of an agreement between the Community Council of Greater Dallas and Dallas Area Agency on Aging and Tarrant County for chronic disease self-management education workshops, and the contract amount is not to exceed $90,000. This is sort of a growing collaboration with them. They received a grant, and we're the sub-grantee for a chronic pain management program. And now, in discussions, they've wanted to add this service of a chronic disease self-management program that has been a district project of ours, an 1115 waiver project. So this will bring some additional revenue up to $90,000 for those classes.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vinny. Jack? Morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Jack.
Your Honor, other members of the court, we have two items now for your consideration. If we can go to item number 2, which is a bid award recommendation for bid 2020-019. This is a new annual contract for sit-stand desks, monitor arms, and fatigue mats. Our recommendation will be to award on a per enterprise basis and discount from list price, awarding to the 4 primary vendors as shown in your court communique.
What's a monitor arm?
Monitor arms, put your computer on.
Oh, okay.
Move approval.
You can sit down now.
And you can stand, sit. It's the Vince has one.
Second. We have a motion and second. Now discussion. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our second and last item, we can go to item number 3. This is an item in regards to bid 2020-015. This was a bid for the Temporary Criminal Justice Center Security Improvement Project. We are recommending rejection of the both bids that we received and suggesting we rebid with revised specifications. Bid received from one vendor. They were over their bonding allowed requirements. Too much business. The other bid that we received was $92,636 above budget.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Are there any appointments today? Then you have before you the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Manius, briefing items.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, we have 3 items to bring to you this morning. The first concerns current and emerging health issues. Dr. Tanasia is here to address the Court at this time.
Thank you again. So I'll be talking to you about 2 items in this briefing. One is the novel coronavirus, and the second one is the flu. But right off the bat, I want to stress the point for everybody that flu is our major problem. The novel coronavirus is the new shiny object that we're all chasing after. But it is a...
No. We're not chasing after.
Running from. Yes, sir.
We are not chasing after.
Point well taken. We're running from. But, that's gotten all the attention in the last couple of weeks, and flu is really what's impacting us every day and, in fact, causing a lot of morbidity and mortality across the United States. But let me cover novel coronavirus first, because it is hot and heavy in the news. And it's very fast moving. So this map and the slide I prepared on Friday, and it's already outdated. So just for background, in early January, China confirmed an outbreak of a pneumonia caused by a new coronavirus detected in December 2019. I think they made a determination on 31st of December 2019. So the label for the virus is 2019 novel coronavirus. They haven't come up with a fancy, catchy name yet, so they're sticking with it. And the outbreak originated in the city of Wuhan in Hubei province in China. And now, as of today, what we know has spread to most of China. I believe there are 33 provinces, and at least 29 of them are reporting cases. This morning, there are 18 locations throughout the world, 17 outside of mainland China that have reported cases. But the number of cases overseas outside of China are less than 100. So WHO has sort of stopped short of declaring it a global health emergency because what they're finding is that there's sustained transmission in Wuhan and in Hubei province, which is under a severe lockdown, a quarantine of sorts. But outside of that, there are some evidence of human-to-human sustained transmission in other parts of China, but not overseas yet. The overseas cases have been very limited travel-related cases, so they're stopping short of declaring a global health emergency. But there are several countries involved, including United States. We have 5 cases in the U.S. that are confirmed at this point. Washington State, Illinois, California has 2, and Arizona has 1. So total 5 in 4 states.
I thought there was an A&M student that.
Yes, I will.
Oh.
Yes, I will address that in a second. In Wuhan, and on Friday there were 5 Chinese cities, but now I think there's about 15 that are on various stages of lockdown. This is unprecedented. I mean, I don't think the world has seen this. 60 million people are on some kind of a lockdown. That is just beyond imagination. Wuhan itself is about 11 million people, and the population during the day grows like with any large metropolitan city because people come into work and so forth. But now they have really locked it down. No public transport, no buses, no trains, no airplanes leaving. Wow. If you're traveling by car, you need to have a special permit from the government. If you get caught without one, 7 years in jail. So they're really serious about this. I don't think any country other than China can attempt this because they really have got this down. But they're still struggling because the cases are really growing. Latest update this morning is about 4,500 cases in China and about 106 deaths. Another unprecedented thing that I don't think I've ever seen, but there are reports of 2 prefabricated hospitals being built in a hurry to address this outbreak and the hospitalizations related to it, one in Wuhan and one in Beijing. So we'll see how, once they become operational, what's the outcome there. U.S., again, we're mostly travel related. Like I said, there are 5 confirmed cases. There are, as of yesterday, 110 people under investigation in 26 U.S. states, and then there were about 32 so far who have tested negative, 5 have confirmed positive, and rest are pending 72-ish, somewhere in that range. Now, out of that, as of Friday, because our DSHS call is happening now, so hopefully they have more updates, but as of Friday, they had 4 people under investigation in Texas, including the one in Texas A&M and another one in Baylor. Both have tested negative. I think the A&M results came in on Sunday evening late, and the Baylor results came in on yesterday. So both have tested negative, and we're hoping it stays that way. The risk of generalized spread in Texas is very, very low. Again, because people who've traveled in have heard enough on the radio and news that they've self-reported to healthcare that I might have these symptoms, can I get checked out? So we are very hopeful that it stays that way and doesn't become a widespread issue. So far, looking at other countries also, it hasn't started spreading. The risk from previous outbreaks like this is it tends to impact healthcare workers and family members who are in close contact. This is a new coronavirus. So just to give you background, this is now our 7th known coronavirus. So far, we knew about 6. 4 of them have been found since the 1960s. They're very common. A lot of the winter cough and colds that we have are caused by a couple of coronaviruses. There are others.
Okay, tell me why because I know it doesn't have anything to do with the beer, so tell me where corona...
Yes, sir. On an electron microscope...
I don't think it has anything to do with the beer.
No, it does not. There's a lot of internet memes floating around on Facebook about corona beer, but it's got nothing to do with the beer. It is on an electron microscope. When you look at the virus particle itself, it has crown-like spikes, and that's how it gets the name coronavirus. So it literally wears a crown. So we have known about 4 of them since the 1960s. 2 of them are very, very common, cause the common cold and cough-like symptoms in the winter. A lot of us experience it. Sometimes you run into a little bit of a complication. It may cause a little bit of a viral pneumonia, but it's rare. Mostly just mild common cold is what it causes. That's the 2 common kinds. The other 2 are also involved in GI illnesses, can cause stomach upsets. The 2 recent ones in recent history, one was found in 2003, and I think the other one was 2009 or 10. The 2003 was on a severe scale. It was the SARS, Severe Acute Respiratory Distress Syndrome coronavirus, and that caused 8,000 cases worldwide, spread out of China. I think Hong Kong was the epicenter at that point. In a hotel, there was an individual, and there was shared air in the hotel. And I think that individual was labeled a super spreader because then 23 cases went from there. Some ended up in Toronto in Canada, and then the hospital workers got infected. SARS was known for having super spreaders where individuals would produce so much virus that people around them could not escape it. And it caused about 800 deaths worldwide, and it was a pandemic. So there was a lot of concern. MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, was the second one that was on the severe scale that originated out of the Middle East. A lot of people who travel to Jordan or Bahrain or neighboring countries and have exposure to camels, either through camel milk or camel farming or camel cheese that is not pasteurized, end up sometimes having that virus. And again, it's a respiratory illness, also with some GI symptoms. It hasn't been as bad as the SARS, and it's an ongoing thing. We occasionally do get people returning from Middle East that are tested for MERS. But both were, the 5 and 6 were on a severe scale, and this falls somewhere in the middle. It's a new one, so we don't know for sure, how severe it's going to be and how rapid and wide it spreads. That's all being studied, but it appears to be right in the middle. Most of the coronaviruses do originate from some animals. So just for informational purposes, SARS came from civet cats, and MERS obviously came from camels. This one yet to be found on where it came from. There's a lot of theories on the internet that it might be some kind of reptile like a snake or another. Some people have been talking about bats. We don't know for sure. We'll find out and then we'll update you guys as well. So I've kind of covered most of this. One of the things that I didn't mention, that the new coronavirus does cause a fever, cough, difficulty breathing, and pneumonia. And pneumonia is where a lot of complications and death can occur. So that's why it's on a severe scale of the known coronaviruses. There is evidence of human-to-human transmission. Theories are that it jumped species and possibly spread by droplets. We don't know that if it gets beyond droplets into airborne transmission, because that becomes a little bit more infectious. But that's what we're dealing with right now, and as the situation evolves, we'll know more. So how can we prevent it? There is no known vaccine that's out available for general public use. Now, as always, there is a vaccine under development, and CDC did say that if the situation arises, we may get the FDA to approve an emergency use authorization, but we're hoping we don't get there. But as of now, for all practical purposes, we don't have a vaccine. There is no treatment, but again, there's an investigational drug under development, another antiviral. So we have some resources in the back pocket, but they're not available for general public use, only under an emergency use authorization. So what can we do as the general public? First of all, we should not worry. It's not here. It's not widespread. We're okay. What we can do is avoid unnecessary travel to China. Originally on Friday, CDC had a level 3 warning for travel to Wuhan, meaning avoid all non-essential travel. I think they've expanded that to rest of China over the weekend. So if there is no need to go to China unless there is a major emergency, avoid travel. And this is the holiday period, for China, the Lunar New Year and the Spring Festival. So a lot of families do want to travel back and forth, and it's kind of a Asia thing, because it's Vietnam and neighboring countries, Hong Kong, Taiwan, a lot of these places. So avoid travel, but especially to China. And then common sense things that we practice during the flu come here as well. Avoid contact with sick individuals, cover your coughs and sneezes, hand wash throughout the day, and seek healthcare immediately if you fall ill or have some symptoms, especially if you've returned in the last 2 weeks from China. So what are we doing as Tarrant County Public Health to prepare? We have activated our Department Operations Centers. That means we're meeting on a regular basis to go over situational updates. We're listening into CDC and DSHS conference calls. In fact, right now I have staff downstairs in our EOC downstairs on the 4th floor attending a DSHS call with our emergency management folks to get the latest updates on what's happening in Texas. State of Texas has activated their Medical Operations Center. The governor declared that, I think, yesterday, I believe. So that puts DSHS and the state emergency management in a special operations mode to get this coordinated and have a response ready if it does hit Texas. With that, I would like to transition into flu, unless you have any questions on the novel coronavirus. Okay. So this is where most of our worry needs to be, because it's here, it's present, and it's widespread still in Texas and 37 other states. The number actually jumped up from the last time I spoke with you. There were 34 states that were reporting high flu activity. Now there are 37 reporting high flu activity, so it's actually turning back around and going up a little in many states. Flu activity has been widespread over a while, so there's a lot of vaccine consumption that has happened. 173 million doses have been distributed across our 50 states. The activity is expected to remain high for several weeks yet, because February is still not here. So February does have a lot of flu activity, and typically a peak is seen in February. National influenza-like illness picture. So the left graph is the national data. The red line with the triangles represents influenza-like illness. And as you can see, the latest week's data is showing an uptick after declining for about 3 weeks. The right graph is the state of Texas data. The red line represents the current season. Again, a mild uptick, not as bad as the national data, but we're not declining anymore. We're either stabilizing or heading towards another up run, if you will. So we'll just have to see what happens. Tarrant County is continuing to show declines, so we're in a 4th week of decline, so that's good news. We'll see what happens, but if Texas turns around and starts to go back up, very likely we'll see that happen here as well. Confirmed hospitalizations, the red line with dots, we are ticking higher, but again, nothing compared to 2017-18 season. That was a really, really bad year. We're okay. We're kind of middle of the road this year compared to other seasons. I would like to see the pink line. 2011-12 was pretty mild, but we're considerably higher than that, and it's causing some issues. Lab tests. So influenza is not always tested in the laboratory. We run a lot of rapid tests, but for surveillance purposes, we do some lab confirmation. So as you can see, after about 2-3 weeks of decline, on the left side, the national data shows that we're starting to go back up on positive influenza lab tests. That means the data in ILI is confirmed by laboratory confirmation as well. And the same thing is being reported on the right in the Texas data. As you can see, there's a clear uptick in the line chart there on the top, showing that again positivity has started to go up for lab results. Again, confirming the uptick we saw in the influenza-like illness. Here's a zip code distribution map for Tarrant County. Not much has changed. Some of the colors may have shifted a little bit, but we are still pretty heavy in Fort Worth and Arlington and mid-cities area. Northeast Tarrant County has flu activity, not as bad as the heart of Tarrant County, but it's pretty widespread all across. So that's where we are. So far, CDC did update this chart for us. They included half of January, so there are 15 million illnesses reported, 7 million hospital or medical visits, 140,000 hospitalizations, and 8,200 deaths, which is a striking increase from December. We had 2,900 deaths. So as we progress in the season, this number is expected to go higher. So that's all I have for flu, and I'll be happy to answer any questions on either one of these illnesses. And again, flu is our real problem. Coronavirus, again, we'd like to run away from and not have it here, but that's the shiny new object syndrome. Everybody's sort of looking at that, and for a good reason. It can cause a lot of illness if it gets out, but we're hoping that it sort of gets controlled in China and not have to be a problem in other countries, because we really don't want that. But we're prepared if something does happen, but flu is really our main concern at this point.
Any questions? Thanks, Vinny.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members of the Court, on item B, this is an update on the election transportation program. Ms. Camerano is here to address the court at this time.
Good morning,
Good
Judge,
morning.
Commissioners.
Chris.
Here to update you on the election transportation program. As you recall, we began this in 2019 with the local elections, and we'd like to look into doing this in 2020. What you have before you today are the options for primary elections in 2020 as they fall within the current fiscal year. I'll be back again later to discuss general election options. You'll see on the spreadsheet option A, B, and C. Option A being election day only, and again, this is for primary. Option B, early voting weekend and election day, and option C, which would be all of early voting and election day. So option A, you see, is $7,970 is the estimated cost for that program, $83.13 for both early voting weekend and election day, and $12,861 for option C. So I'm seeking some general direction as to which program you'd like me to pursue, and then I would be back again in a few weeks with agreements with transit providers and a request for action.
I'd like to see us pursue option C. to make voting as accessible and easy as possible.
Would that be a motion?
That would be a motion.
Is there a second?
Do we need a motion?
Are you wanting to take action today?
We simply need direction. If you can give us direction, if you want to do a motion, that's fine.
Second. I have some questions.
Okay, we have a motion, second. Discussion?
I would like to see actually the 2019 numbers, the budgeted and actual. I know you gave those to us before, but just think for comparison's sake.
Sure.
And then I have questions about the contingency. What does that?
I allowed a little bit of a contingency because, as we know, the number of people that actually make it out to the polls is hard to predict. And if for whatever reason these estimates aren't as close as I think they are, I'd like to have a little bit of room in there so we don't go over budget.
What did we spend in 2019?
Right. So in 2019, and I can provide you with an estimate. I don't remember exactly, but we were around 600 trips, and it was about $1,200, I believe.
Total?
Yes, sir. And that was election day only. And so what I've done, and there's a little bit of an explanation here, but I assumed a 20% increase over 2016. I went back to the last presidential election year and took those numbers, assumed a 20% increase, and then assumed with greater outreach for this program, as we'll have a little bit more time this year, that the ratio of trips to voters would double.
I'm glad to see Grand Connection on here, so that's good. What are your thoughts in terms of the marketing materials?
So a lot of it will be done through social media. I have included some money for printed material in the proposed budgets. I would like to see some distribution of that. Primarily, the outreach will be through local community groups. I've brought together a committee of people both inside and outside of Tarrant County, the organization, to get feedback on which groups would be best to reach out to get the word out. There are a list of about 25 that I have so far. The committee's been a great help in providing those contacts for me. So I think that we'll have a lot easier time of getting the word out this year.
I would consider this an adjunct to our elections program. It is highly possible that with vote centers and the fact that we have made voting more accessible across the county, that we won't need as much of this money as we might have needed without vote centers. But it makes sense to be prepared and to have the authorization in case we do need it.
Are you going to be able to get numbers after this?
Absolutely.
Primary
Yes.
That are correct and accurate?
Yes, sir. And we did that also in 2019. So I'll have part of the agreements with each transit provider is that they respond in a timely manner with data. As far as Trinity Metro is concerned, we receive data by route. And then for all the call-ahead services, we receive counts as to how many people have booked through each service. For VIA, the service in Arlington, we receive exact numbers for how many people visited each of the vote centers. And that's because of the software that VIA uses in their app that gives us that data.
Okay. Any other questions, discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Finally, members of the court, we're going to give you a brief update on the Census 2020. Mr. Schaffner is here to address the court at this time.
Good morning.
Good morning, Judge, Commissioners.
Good morning.
We are here to give you an update regarding our Tarrant counts and our 2020 census activities. As you can see on your screen, we have worked to develop a logo and branding for our effort. You Count, We Count, Tarrant Counts. We have worked with a number of different stakeholders, both inside the county and outside, particularly within our kind of core team, Kristen Camarino, Bill Hanna, Patricia Ward, Susan Sodek, and now new to our team, Regina Calderon, Redmond Worthy, and Lisa McMillan, as well as precinct staff, Judge, your staff, and then have to give a shout out to Budget, Helen and her staff, as well as Jack, the purchasing agent, and his staff. This has been a huge, huge effort that we have been doing across, really across the county for the last few months, trying to have the best possible outreach for the best count for the census. So I wanted to give you an update today on where we are and kind of what we're doing. Just to kick it off, the census has begun. This is, you see a picture of Lizzie, who is 90 in Tooksuk Bay, Alaska. She was the first person enumerated in the 2020 census on January 21st. So it has started. They'll start in Alaska in the most remote regions, and then it will and then we will begin actually having the census, the ability to take your census online will begin on March the 12th. So put it on your calendar, March the 12th. The census will be available online to begin to take, and we'll continue to be getting items out to you. So this is just a general timeline. We've talked about timelines several times as we've gone through this process. March 12th through the 20th, every resident will receive a letter with info to take the survey, to take the census survey online. March 16th to 24th, the reminder letter will go out to all housing units.
These letters will come from the census.
From the Census Bureau, yes. Yes, this is not our activity. This is the Census Bureau's activity as far as what they will be sending out to residents within Tarrant County. March 26th through April 3rd, a postcard will be sent out to non-respondents. Those are the folks that have not responded at that time. And then also in April, a letter plus the hard copy questionnaire will go out. They're not going to send those out until April. Again, to those who have not gone ahead and taken it online or by phone. Then you'll have another postcard, and it's not too late. And then if by the end of April you have not responded, you can expect between May and July someone to be knocking at your door, an official census enumerator to knock on your door and try to get that information from you in person. So this is just an ongoing item, and just as a bit of a PSA, as this is census opportunity, we've talked about this before about how important it is to keep information confidential and safe, in that if it's through the Census Bureau, your information is safe and confidential. It is important to be diligent and to remind our citizens and our residents to be diligent about people that may be trying to take advantage of this increase in activity. So make sure and ask for name badges, numbers, to make sure that they are from the Census Bureau. So Tarrant counts. Currently some items that we have accomplished to date. We have printed materials that are available. We'll be giving your offices goodie bags here in just a little bit with printed materials. They're at your spot. We also have some information out online, but we do have printed materials. You've got a full-page flyer, a rack card, as well as a quarter-page handout. We have plenty of these. Just let us know if you need more. As both you, the Commissioner's Court, and other officials within the county, anytime anybody is out giving presentations, we have plenty of printed materials to make sure everybody at that has something to get the message out. We're in the awareness phase and the general education phase of our program to make sure that people know that the census is coming and that you can take it online, by phone, and by mail. We will also have these printouts available in Spanish, Vietnamese, and Arabic. We're getting those, or currently at the translators, and we'll have those printed within just a few weeks. We have a website. The website is live at census.tarrantcounty.com. It is available in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. So please send people to the website. We're leveraging partnerships currently with JPS, Mhmr, Tarrant, United Way, Mills on Wheels, and others. as well as other complete count committees that various cities have set up. We have a coordination meeting. Hopefully it's going to get finalized for next week with all of them to work on how we're going to handle various issues and divvy up the various workload. And we're continuing to do outreach and event coordination with your staffs and others. Next steps, we're going to be standing up the Census Ambassador Program. This is to help get community members educated and go through a short training on how to be helpful with the census. We'll also be standing up the Census Assistance Centers. That's really hard. We're trying to come up with a better acronym. You know, there's one at the moment, it's Census Neighborhood Assistance Center, which would be SNAC, which is kind of fun. But we're working to put those together. We're hoping to have 100 locations across the county by April 1st. To where if
Can you say that one more time? What's that number?
100 locations across the county, that by April 1st, if you need help filling out the census, there will be someone trained and a computer for you to use or a telephone for you to use to be able to go and get help with the census.
Is that primarily going to be, say, in our sub-courthouses, tax assessors, maybe county clerks, WIC programs, public health, JPS?
Yes, all the above, plus various cities. Mayor's Council is next week. We will be asking every city to have at least one neighborhood assistance center in their city, whether it's City Hall, a library, but to have something. We're going to give you all the materials. We're going to provide through the Census Bureau training on how to do this to where it will be a robust effort within Tarrant County to make sure that if people need help filling out the census, there is some place to go that is close and within the various neighborhoods. We're working on hard to count area coordination. This is primarily 24.6% of Tarrant County has been designated as hard to count areas. How do we do that outreach? One of the ways that we are working on that is with apartment complexes, making sure that all the apartment complexes, and there are 171 that are within a hard to count area or a hard to count census tract. So we will be working with the other the complete count committees with the cities to find ways and the best ways to go into those apartment complexes and make sure those folks are aware of the census and how important it is and get educational material out to those locations. Again, training and outreach events, you're going to be hearing a lot from us regarding scheduling these events as we do it in trainings through the Census Bureau, and then mailings. Everybody in the unincorporated area will be getting a postcard from Tarrant Counts regarding the census. That'll have information on it. Everybody in the unincorporated area will also be doing some targeted postcards to various locations in the hard to count areas. But also with your appraisal notice, which goes out on or about April 1st, there will be a envelope insert in there regarding the census. So we're hoping to send those out to about 400,000 households with the appraisal notices. So we're trying to leverage what exists within Tarrant County in order to raise the profile and the awareness regarding the census.
Russell,
yes,
question.
Sir.
Speaking of hard to count,
yes.
What kind of outreach are we going to make to those who may be homeless and or unsheltered?
We're going to be working with the complete count committees within Fort Worth and Arlington and the other cities that have them, coordinating on that specific issue. The Census Bureau does have a designated team to be working with homeless and unsheltered populations, but making sure that we can support other efforts that are currently ongoing with that. But we will be working with that, and I'll have more on next month's update on specifically on how that issue would be handled.
The Tarrant County Homeless Coalition is working on also.
This may be a Mayor's Council question next week. Have we considered asking the cities to stuff it in water bills or electric?
That'll be part of the process next week. So at Mayor's Council, we will be handing out flash drives with all of our Tarrant Counts information on it, as well as the various Census Bureau relevant information, so they can put it on their websites, put it in water bills, mailers, flyers, we're going to be handing out cards to everybody and anybody who will take them to make sure that the cities also have everything available to them to get it out within their folks. So, yes, sir, that's part of the plan. So, just so y'all can see a couple of slides that you all will be getting and that hopefully you'll be seeing on monitors around the county. Census, it's easy. Take online by phone or mail. And again, those are one of the biggest issues that we need to push out regarding education is that the census is now available online. Has not been, for the 200 plus years beforehand, was not available to be taken online. It is now. You can also take it by phone and mail. 10 questions, 10 minutes. It's quick. It's easy. You can even take it on your mobile phones, on your smartphone. And then watch for census information in your mailbox. And on all of our publications, anything that we print will be this purple box. Your information is safe and confidential. It is illegal for the U.S. Census Bureau to share census information. Our website, Census Customer Information Center, this is the official number for the Census Bureau, to where if you have questions or issues, that's the number to call. And then also trying to work on getting as many people to sign up for our updates, which will start in March. Tarrant counts to 69310. So with that, happy to answer any questions and really appreciate all the work that everybody is putting into this across y'all's staffs and so many others across the county.
I'd just like to reiterate that the census is for every person living in this country, citizen or not,
yes, sir,
documented or not. Every person living in this country needs to be counted.
Yes, sir, and we are making sure that any information we put out talks about residents, that residents of Tarrant County, those are the folks that need to be taking the census.
So I have more suggestions than I do questions. I want to thank everybody who has worked on this so far because I think we've made some pretty significant progress. A couple of things that have come up as I've been out and about in the community is I guess that the Census Bureau is putting out signs, and I'm not sure what the signs say, but I understand they're not necessarily putting out signs like to code for particular cities, so then some of the cities have had to pull the signs up.
Oh,
so particularly when it comes to our unincorporated area, and I don't know if we have anything regarding signs, but I would like for us to coordinate with them how those signs get put out, where those signs get put out, so that we're not, having to pull them up, but more importantly, so that they're out there so that people can see them. I know in Dallas County, apparently, that they've been doing pretty well recruiting for enumerators. They're having some issues with Spanish-English bilingual enumerators. Have we received an update on how that effort is going in Tarrant County?
I have not received an update. Okay. We have put the inquiry out,
sure.
But we do not have. I do not have an update at this time. But I'll follow up with you in the court regarding that issue.
Okay, great. And I know somewhat connected to that is that they're going to be looking for training locations. So I think that's an opportunity for any of our partners, if they have training rooms available, that they could help so that the enumerators have space for training.
And Commissioner, thank you for bringing that up. We've been working with facilities and David Phillips' team regarding making Tarrant County space available to the Census Bureau regarding training of enumerators. It has been a heavy lift, but we are coordinating that, and we will have dozens of trainings across our various facilities for enumerators. So we've been very engaged in that discussion.
You had mentioned the hard-to-count areas, in particular the 171 apartment complexes that was for Tarrant, the entire county, right?
Yes,
okay. Ma'am. I'd like to suggest that we, particularly for Arlington and Grand Prairie, Kennedale, I know that Mission Arlington, they work with 300 plus apartment communities, which obviously some of those may not be in hard-to-count areas, but to work with them, since they already have established relationships with either the owners or the property managers, and that would be a good way to reach them. And then that leads to all of that. I think all of the organizations that receive county funding, the nonprofit organizations, if we haven't already reached out to them with, whether it's a kit or a collateral something, and letting them know about our count effort, and that they can, if they don't get information from their respective cities, depending on where they're located and what their cities have a capacity for, then they should count on us for that. Let's see. Faith-based organizations. I think that, maybe if we work off the list from your office for those that provide invocation, and obviously the organizations in our respective precincts to try to, I'm already lining up visits to go to some of the larger congregations that will welcome the opportunity, but I think we need to at least do some kind of mailing or something.
Okay.
And I think, excuse me, along that line, Catholic Charities, Central Texas Conference has, their bishop is located here in Fort Worth, Tarrant County. I think with all of the major denominations, we should work with them and see what we can do about communicating that out to the various congregations and the works that they may be doing from that standpoint. 60 and better. A lot of those organizations can be very helpful, I think. And that's where our IT may have to work with them as far as helping them set up or working with them on setting up to have a computer or how they can do that from that perspective.
And regarding our collateral, I know that when I was talking with Dr. Farmeyers in Arlington, and she had made a great point about, so if Arlington residents are receiving information from Arlington, information from us potentially, and then also information from the census, is making sure that we're communicating on what each other's collateral looks like, so then we can help to educate folks on if the information, this is what you can expect to see, just like with the letters that we knew are coming from the census.
Correct.
Seeing those ahead of time so that if we get calls into our office with people wanting to substantiate that it is in fact from the census and not from someone trying to do something illegal. So I want to make sure that we do that.
Okay.
And then, and I may have missed this, but what are our thoughts on some of our, you talked about the Mayor's Council. I'm concerned about some of our smaller cities who don't have the capacity for a complete count committee, but
We're working with Patricia Ward and Community Development and the Mayor's Council to do everything we can to.
One other thing, and we don't have it on our material, and somewhere a list that says under no circumstances should they be asking for Social Security numbers, anything, any financial information, something that just basically, because I'll guarantee you there's going to be the scam. Well, there's already started the scams on, doing that. So, anything we could do that says under no circumstances should anybody ask you the following questions. Because I think somewhere you had 3 or 4 or 5 things that just shouldn't be asked.
Correct. And we can work on getting specific materials regarding that issue and how to get that out. Yeah. And we're also making our materials, what goes on the flash drive for mayors will also go up online on the website to where if anybody does need information, we can work with our groups and whatnot to where we don't have to send them a flash drive, but we can send them a link to pull that information off.
And the train may have already left, but along the lines of what David was saying, the more all of the different information from all the different sources could look the same or similar, that way they're not confused. We don't confuse folks. Ideally it would have all said Tarrant County Census and everything would have been identical and we would have everybody would have passed it out. But I know everybody's going to want to put their little name on there, and just like Tarrant County put their name on there. Whatever. Anything else?
My last thing is PSAs. What's our plan or thought about doing PSAs about this? Of course, I know that the census will, and I've already started to hear their radio ads and things like that. But are we planning to do anything separate and apart from what the census is doing?
We're going to be working on a social media strategy to specifically lay out some of those aspects regarding PSAs and other issues. The census has been doing a great job with videos and coming up with a lot of multimedia material. We would like to push a lot of that out front and see kind of what gaps need to be filled in with and what would be most appropriate and how to do that. So,
Thank you all.
Thank you, Russell.
Thank you.
GK, is that it?
That's all we have at this time.
Then at this time, we'll recess from open meeting to move to close to discuss items exempted under section 551.071, 072, 074, 076, and 087 of the Texas Government Code. Thank you. You ready?
Good enough. 3, 4.
Having returned from our closed session, there being no business to conduct at this time, we are adjourned. Be sure to show that there's 4 of us.